The anime begins in a place with a red alert on, surrounded by fallen people and despair everywhere. In the midst of this, a boy named Yogiri walks calmly through the corridor, seemingly unconcerned with the chaos around him, until he stands in front of a camera and asks where a woman named Asaka is. Right in front of him, the entrance to a room opens, and there is the woman Yogiri is looking for being threatened by another who's pointing a gun at her. The boy approaches the situation as if he doesn't understand what's happening, welcoming the woman as if she doesn't have a gun aimed at her head. The aggressor tells the boy to step back or the worst could happen, but at that moment the boy triggers a mysterious effect that instantly eliminates the armed woman. Seeing the scene, Asaka questions what that was, but before she could reflect more on the matter, Yogiri hugs the girl and calls her back home. After this, we see that Yogiri was just dreaming while his friend Tomochika Denura tries to wake up the boy in a hurry. Yogiri is still sleepy on the school bus, but the girl can't believe that he can sleep in the situation they are in, with a gigantic dragon massacring their classmates. Without being sure if he still thinks he's dreaming, the protagonist throws a microphone at the creature's tail, which was piercing a student, until the monster startles with the audacity and turns back towards the bus, threatening to breathe fire at the two humans. However, before any harm could reach them, Yogiri opens an imaginary portal in his mind, and his eyes burn with a contained flame, and as soon as he opens his mouth, the huge dragon dies in the blink of an eye. Denura is safe, but she can't understand how that monster simply fell without a reasonable explanation, and furthermore, Yogiri remains oblivious to the gravity of the situation, then proceeds to turn on his Nintendo to play. Incredulous, the girl starts to protest that the man is unable to talk about all this like a normal person, but as Yogiri is busy crushing a red dragon, the young woman gives up getting worked up and tries to convince her classmate to run off the bus. Seeing that the girl has calmed down, Yogiri puts away the game and asks what the heck is going on. Thus, Denura explains that the whole class was on that bus, heading for an excursion. However, after passing through a tunnel, on the other side was a stunning landscape, and for no apparent reason, an unknown girl gets on the bus and introduces herself to everyone as Cheyenne, the stage. One of the organizers of the excursion asks what this girl is doing there, but she ignores the question and blows up the man, continuing the conversation, emphasizing that the students should pay attention only to her and nothing else. She explains that she has no intention of hurting anyone, but if anyone says anything, they will regret it. After all, the little sage's attack power is 530,000, and anyone who challenges that has certainly thrown their life in the trash. Apparently, this was a joke on her part, but since no one laughed, she decided to massacre the bus driver just because the audience's ignorance annoyed her. After that, she tells those present that they are in an Isekai, also known as a kind of parallel world, and that she summoned them all as potential sages. This world is ruled by this class, so sometimes it is important to replenish some numbers that were lost. Then Shine invokes a magic similar to a rainbow and envelops the students with an installation called Battle Song, where each user can see their own statistics and the class to which they belong according to the person's talent. However, as Denura did not receive this installation, she asks her friend Maikoki what she is seeing, and she was placed in the Necromancer class. According to Cheyenne, the aspirants will have a month to become sages, otherwise only God knows what will happen to the failures. Seeing that it might end up being her, Denura raises her hand and comments that she was left out of the selection, but the sage makes it clear that the girl does not have the necessary gift to participate in the process. Despite this, perhaps out of pure sadism, Cheyenne warns that Denura also needs to become a sage, otherwise she will become a mere cattle in the farm of life. Finally, the sage sets a 1-hour limit to complete the first mission, then gets off the bus and leaves. Confused, Denura sits next to Maikoki to see what's going on, and the friend tells her that the first objective is to get rid of a level 1000 dragon that is coming to attack. However, ironically, the regulations themselves state that no one there is capable of facing an enemy of that level at the stage they are in. Next, a guy named Suguru Yazaki leads the group and showing leadership skills. He calls his colleagues to show their abilities and form a strategy for the task. Meanwhile, Yogiri is in the 7th heaven and stays out of the team formation. Denura notices that besides her, 2 other classmates were without the battle song, Ayaka Shinozaki and Yuichiro Kiryu. For this reason, they were forced to stay inside the bus, while everyone involved with the installation left under Yazaki's leadership, who, when dealing with the revolt of the excluded, shows that those who receive the gift have their physical abilities enhanced even at the first level. And with that strength, he breaks 2 seats of the bus and blocks the passage outside because, according to him, the excluded have no special abilities, so they will be a burden to the others. Denura thinks differently and believes that the privileged should protect the weaker ones, but the group leader is insistent in his response, revealing that this is a strategy, then calls Asuba Koriyama, the beauty coordinator, to cast a charm on all the excluded, making them attractive to the dragon and consequently, bait to be eaten, while the rest of the group gains time to reach the city. In a panic, Danora finds it absurd and questions if the leader decided this alone, as no one in their right mind would accept it. Mikochi surely voted against it. However, Yazaki responds quite curtly that Danora's friend agreed to the plan, and after that, he locks the renegades in the bus and continues with his strategy. Shortly after, the dragon had already flown over the car and slaughtered Shinozaki and Kiryu, leaving only the last two rejects after Yogiri woke up from his beauty sleep and killed the winged monster with the power of thought. And speaking of the guy, even after hearing this whole story about sages in a parallel world with creatures that spit fire, all that concerned him was how he would recharge his Nintendo in that Isekai. However, after Danora complained about this indifference, he gets up and realizes that if they believe Yazaki, then there's only one dragon to be slain, and since that one has turned to dust, it might be safe to go outside. Despite this observation, Danora still seemed concerned about why they were in this place, and Yogiri suggests the version that they crashed the bus and everyone is dead. The girl doesn't like this idea, but the guy is convinced when he says she doesn't have to believe him if she doesn't want to. So it's to get out of the car and are faced with three path choices: mountain, city, or forest. Yogiri dismisses the forest right away, but before advancing his reasoning, Danora sees three students approaching through the air. Yogiri recommends they knock down the birds as a precaution, but Danora responds that nowhere is it written that you need to kill three classmates just because they are flying towards you. Speaking of them, the healer of the group, Hanakawa, regrets that the girl is still alive because it ruined their plan to turn her corpse into a zombie. Higashida, the hero class, had warned that it wasn't certain the girl was dead, while Fukuhara, the necromancer, always found the idea of controlling the poor thing like an undead somewhat strange. As expected, Danora realizes that they did not come in friendship, but before she can act, Higashida launches a fireball that devastates a mountain 100 meters away, considering a warning for the girl not to resist. When asked why they want to kidnap the victim, the three aspirants imply that they want to use Danora for some malicious games. Therefore, Yogiri knew he needed to put them in a negotiating position, so he used the weapon of dialogue on the rival leader Higashida. He points his index finger at the hero and utters the word die. Watching the scene, the two companions burst into laughter because of the guy's hilarious attitude. However, the joke ends when Higashida drops dead instantly. Astonished, the two remaining partners ask what Yogiri did, and without hesitation, he coldly replies that he told Higashida to die, and he died. From what they saw, it wasn't very difficult to understand, but it seems Fukuhara didn't want to take it seriously when Yogiri told no one to move, and when the necromancer went to see if his friend was still alive, he ended up with the same fate. Finally, the assassin repeats the same order to the remaining boy, Hanakawa, and the healer decides to place statue instantly. Thus, the overpowered one finally has the chance to explain his ability. First, he has the chubby one check if the other two are really dead. Then Hanakawa tries to heal his friends, but in vain because they really went to a better place. Second, the protagonist even complains that it's a pain to explain this, but in a summarized way, he reveals that his ability is called instant death for any target. If he simply thinks of killing someone, that person dies immediately. Hanakawa responds that such a thing does not exist, and Yogiri asks if he wants to serve as the last evidence. The healer hesitates, but still tries to take advantage of an opportunity to attack the enemy, but Yogiri can also identify any intent to eliminate him, so the attack could not have succeeded. In fact, he can kill the target just by thinking of eliminating Yogiri. That is, it seems that nothing can go right against this guy. He is the very definition of overpower. In this case, all that's left is to sit and cry, and that's exactly what Hanakawa does. And to mock them, Yogiri asks why these three were so proud of these basic talents, and Hanakawa responds that it's not the first time they've entered this world. Not long ago, the mage from the kingdom of Amen summoned them to defeat the demon lord, and after they spent a year there and completed the mission, they returned to the real world. Yogiri turns to Danora, and both comment that they didn't even realize that those three had been absent from school for all this time, but Hanakawa was willing to maintain his heroic pose, so he clarifies that time passes differently there, and as soon as they return to Earth, only a few hours had passed. Soon, Yogiri discovers that there is a chance to go back and raises his hand against the victim, who pleads for her life to the point of asking Danora to convince Lord Takatu to give up this idea. However, as he was the one who saved her life, she doesn't think she has to give her opinion on this problem. Thus, as a last resort, the Mark for Death guy takes out a rare artifact that promises to enslave the user, subjecting him to all the wills of the first person he encounters. Soon he puts on the collar and starts to humiliate himself for his new mistress, Danora, but the girl found the guy's approach a bit disgusting and tells him to step back, tightening the leash. She tries to pass the ownership of the healer to Yogiri, but he cries just at the thought of not being enslaved by Lady Tomochika. Despite that, the exchange was already done and Yogiri promises not to kill the poor guy after this pathetic humiliation, but he sends the guy into a forest full of evil beasts just for him to see something real quick. So before he leaves, the master instructs the servant to leave behind everything of value, and faced with an obscene amount of adventured gold, Hanako obeys his lord's order and heads into the woods. When asked if the healer couldn't be useful, Yogiri responds that the guy could betray them at any moment. Hearing this, Denora asks if she couldn't do the same, but the protagonist seems aware of it and prefers to take the risk. Surprised, his companion wants to know the reason for this, as they've never been ones to talk much. However, the young man seems not to have a good reason for it. But after a few reflective seconds, he remembers when Denora hugged him at the moment when the dragon was about to attack them. On that occasion, the girl's embrace made him feel the voluminous softness of her water balloons, and in response, Denora curses her savior. And in the meantime, in an enigmatic floating castle, Yuchi, the assistant to the wise Cheyenne, reports on the first mission of the new potential sages. The mission was successfully completed, but there were 4 fatalities. Cheyenne quickly thinks that the 4 renegades were the ones who died, but the assistant reveals that, in fact, only 2 outcasts were eliminated. In addition to these, 2 more of rank S, as the more experienced ones died suddenly. Perhaps this is the work of instant death magic. However, despite the seriousness of the matter, Cheyenne doesn't pay much attention to the problem and leaves it to Yuichi to act as he sees fit. So after a long walk, the protagonists reach the city. Despite Denora's excitement, Takatu is just eager to take a nap. Nevertheless, the guards are closing the gate, but the girl is in a hurry and tries to convince them to let them in. Instead of letting them in, the guards put the duo under the watch of Masahiko, a city representative. He questions how this second group of candidates appeared alone after the entire group had already arrived. Takatu explains that they got separated from the larger group. Masahiko seems bothered by this story and clarifies that they would usually charge a toll from the boys, but they were instructed not to mess with sage candidates. The protagonist ignores the fuss and mentions they heard about a capital, asking how they can get there. Masahiro seizes the opportunity and retorts that they were told not to interfere with the candidate's path, but no one said they couldn't help them. Takatu sarcastically thanks for the help and leaves, but the representative goes further, suggesting that the girl could spend the night at his mansion. Denora is embarrassed, pulls Takatu away, and they run off. Some time later, Denora feared that Takatu might have to kill that man. On the other hand, he feels offended and asks if she thinks he's some kind of lunatic. She responds that the part of him that hasn't realized that is the most charming. After that, they start exploring the city. Denora is excited that the place looks like it's from a fantasy movie with people resembling animals. Mairyu, one of them, greets the 2 outsiders and asks if everything's meow with them. As it seems to be their first time there, she also asks if they have problems or another kind of meow. Without answering the questions, Takatu asks what she wants. The cat gets straight to the point, expressing her desire to be close to sage candidates because they have a promising future and are easy to seduce. Denora comments that the cat is very direct, but Mairyu clarifies that she would never hit on a guy with a girlfriend. She adds that the key to success is developing a very mild friendship with the candidates. Takatu asks what she thinks about bringing the cat along. As she wanted to take a look at the city before dark, they decide to go with Mireio. However, this outing turns bad as the cat convinces Denora to buy a bunch of expensive things she'll never use, only to end up cornered by a gang of anthropomorphs in the dead of night. The gang leader, the only human, mocks Takatu for being so calm in such a situation. When asked if they want money, the boss says it's one of the goals, but the main course is talentless sage candidates. Takatu confirms he understands their objectives, but will have to eliminate them. Concerned, Denora tries to warn Mairyu that the guy isn't to be messed with, but she dismisses it as a stupid bluff, saying 2 weaklings without Dom can't do anything in this situation. Then Takatu gives the first command, and the row of enemies behind them falls lifeless. He commands the leopard man to die halfway, but by the way he fell, Takatu notices that even halfway is too much. So he decides to control this power more and nullifies the right ankle of the rooster and the left arm of one of the dogs. Obviously, the rest of the henchmen were already terrified, and even Denora suggests that Takatu is going too far, but he responds with indifference, stating that when he tried to go easy, nobody paid attention. Therefore, he attacks the 2 eyes of another dog, and when the lizard tries to attack, he quickly deals with him too. Witnessing such madness, Mireyu asks Takatu what kind of male he is exactly, but the boy responds that he doesn't even know. Soon he evaluates if his measured abilities were useful, but concludes that it's not efficient to destroy specific parts of someone's body. Plus, he doesn't like the feeling of intentionally torturing someone. Mairyu panics and pleads for her life, mentioning her siblings at home, but Takatu argues that it doesn't justify kidnapping and selling people. Then he raises his right index finger and commands the end for both, but instead, nothing happens. Faced with the stroke of luck, the two thugs swim to freedom while Takatu watches their escape without a reaction. Denura tries to understand, asking if he let them go, but he says it wasn't the intention. Meanwhile, the two villains are running as fast as they can, and Miryu continues to wonder who the hell that kid is. But before any conclusion, her life is taken along with the bosses. She falls from the roof where she was hiding, and her last regret was getting involved with those criminals. Finally, the protagonist duo tries to get out of there before any trouble arises. However, the city guard, led by George and Delgard, is already there, wanting to ask some questions to the two wrongdoers. Takatu takes charge of the interrogation, explaining that they were just passing through and everyone else was already on the ground. However, Delgard caught the boy in the act as she saw the bandits fall at the moment they were about to attack Takatu. This leaves Denura furious for being labeled as suspicious, while the city guard, supposedly witnessing everything, did absolutely nothing to intervene. However, Albert explains that she was trying to trace the buyers of humans from this gang. Finally, she adds that it's better for those candidates not to raise a finger against the guard because they possess the protection of the wise, so the gift does not affect them. Yet Jorge's appraisal skill identified that neither of those two has the gift, meaning it's difficult to assert that they could really take down an entire gang. With this, Adelgard gives up and leaves, but before that, George apologizes for the captain's ignorance, and Takatu asks the guard to find a place for them to spend the night. Despite this, Adelgard ends up finding one of the henchmen alive, the dog that ended up blinded. Still, the two protagonists finally have a moment of peace, hosted in a hotel that looks like a castle, according to Denura, although she has never seen one in her life. As for the rooms, Takatu asks if they can share one, but since the girl finds that a bit too much, he asks her to at least arrange a room next to his. She enters her huge room, and as soon as she jumps on the bed, she questions what idea Takatu had about sharing the room. Upon reflection, she realizes that they've been together every second in that world and wonders if he might like her, even though he only made it clear that he likes one specific thing about her. But the reflection ends when a spirit invades the room. Despite the initial scare, Denura seemed more scared by the fact of finding this spirit in this world, as she asks what the older sister is doing there. Then, the spirit is offended by being compared to that figure and introduces itself as Mokomoko Denura, wife of the founder's son of Denura School, known as the restorer of the school and protector of the Denura family, ancestor of Tamachika Denura and guardian spirit. After this flood of description, Tamachika asks the spirit to take it easy, or she won't be able to keep so much information in her head. Later, Mokomoko warns that Tamachika is in great danger, so she had to appear there to help. But as she has been through a lot to get there, the young girl wonders why the guardian spirit didn't appear earlier when she was in the thick of it. Mokomoko explains that she was afraid of that guy Takatu because if she appeared out of nowhere in front of him, she risked being erased from the face of the earth, as his ability works even with paranormal beings. For this reason, Tamachika Denura must inform the boy tomorrow about the existence of the ghost sister, because only then the spirit will be able to stay safe. Furthermore, she reveals that she can protect Tamachika from everything except physical attacks. In fact, she prevented the installation of the battle song in the girl. As Yogiri was upset about being left without it, Mokomoko explains that that installation has certain advantages, it's true, but once installed in the mind, the wise ones gain control over you. Finally, she confesses that she would love to take away the successor of Denura Archery School, a mixed martial art practice since the Heian dynasty. But since Tamachika is stuck in this world depending on Takatu, the spirit decides to teach the true art of Denura and names this mission Operation. My guardian spirit is the strongest. No one in this other world has a chance against him. The next morning, Denura was exhausted, and when she meets Takatu again, a receptionist named Celestina informs that since yesterday she had been trying to locate their classmates as well as preparing the language translation, status concealment items, and even arrange a charger for Takatu's Nintendo. Finally, she gives the boys 2 tickets to the capital, departing tomorrow at noon. Moreover, she accepts the boy's request to guard all his treasure, and as she even did that, Denura is amazed at the efficiency of this worker. The next morning, the group heads to the new city, and Tamachika is wondering why she is turning the crank of a portable game charger inside the ghostly stomach of a guardian spirit from the Heian dynasty. In the meantime, Mokomoko makes it clear that she does not take up physical space so the young girl can relax. Because of that, Tamachika asks the spirit to sit next to Takatu, but the old apparition is still terrified of the boy. Therefore, he calms the ghost and reveals that he has been able to see her since Tamachika warned him of her existence, and in any case, Tamachika can also sit next to him if she's uncomfortable. With that done, Yogiri Takatu informs that Celestina, the receptionist, thinks their classmates are near the primitive forest, and Denura does not understand how this woman knows so much. At that moment, Takatu lays the girl on the bench, and the roof of the car goes flying. As for the previous city guard, they are trying to extract information from the henchman who survived the assault. A vampire named Lane takes the lead in the process. She is of the original blood class, the highest rank of undead, and analyzing the eyes of the wounded, she is impressed how the blindness of the dog shows no bruising or injury. Then she removes the criminal's eye and heals him with another. Still, he continues unable to see, so Lane bites the dog, who, by linking to the vampire's bloodline, his physical strength grew monstrously. Nevertheless, the vision has not yet returned, which Lane finds intriguing. At that moment, a knight invades the chamber, and as he could not be seen, George analyzes that being belongs to the Bravo class. Back on the train, the announcer warns that a sage is dealing with an aggressor, making Takatu realize that no one is after them. So they head out to see what's happening, and an invading robot is fighting a local protector. Denora asks if Takatu shouldn't erase both since they are in the way. The young man counters with another question. If he should erase everyone who stands in his path, then should he erase everyone who appears in front of him? After all, he has to establish some rules from this ability. Despite his speech, shortly afterward, the two fighters approach the civilians and the sage freezes a bunch of citizens. Meanwhile, the other swordsman reveals himself as Ain and attacks Lane, but the vampire instantly heals every damage she receives. She then questions why Bravo is attacking a sage when he should be facing the demon lord. However, Ain is determined to wipe out all the sages from the earth with his sacred sword Cartina, causing an explosion in the tower, where everyone was mentioning Ariel's name as he celebrates victory. Back on the train, Takatu asks why the sage attacked them, and Santoru becomes irritated with the insolence since sages should be praised on their knees instead of questioned in this way. He even calls Takatu a monstrosity. In response, Takatu finds a reason to erase the sage. In the meantime, the aggressor robot approaches and says it has no intention of fighting. In front of Ain, the vampire asks if Ariel is his lover. Bravo doesn't understand how she survived that, and she replies that she didn't survive, but not even death can hold her, unfortunately. Thus, even after Ain surrenders his life, she decides to spare him but throws Ain down the tower and orders her subordinates to track Yogiri Takatu. The young man is talking to the robot, who notes his ability so it's willing to give anything it can in exchange for avoiding conflict. Takatu asks if the robot knows any way to return to their world, but the aggressor only knows the way back to its own world and can't take Takatu along because, besides not being physically present in this space, it also couldn't bring someone so dangerous to its world. With that, Takatu is satisfied with the help, but Mokomoko wanted to ask one more little favor from the outsider before he leaves. Hours later, George and Edelgard find Santoru's body and inform their leader. With images of the incident, Lane suspects that Yogiri Takatu has the instant death ability, but Cheyenne recalls that Santoru was resistant to that technique, so she instructs her subordinate to investigate if Takatu has any connection to the darkness. Then she sends one of her subordinates, Masayuki, to lead the immortal army to Hanabusa, even if it causes the destruction of that city. Meanwhile, the protagonists decide to leave on their own since they didn't want to be seen with an aggressor, and Mokomoko presents Denura with a sword made from pieces disguised in the girl's clothing, leaving Tomochika wondering how to use a sci-fi weapon that works this way. After their journey, they arrive in the city of Hanabusa, according to Denura, a typical Japanese town. She asks Takatu if he wouldn't like some time to develop his skills, but he replies that he was practicing with some bandits and beasts that were chasing them along the way. When the girl looks back, she sees a pile of bodies behind them. Denura tells him to warn her when there's an enemy behind her because walking unaware is dangerous. The guy just affirms that he knows that very well. Later, she comments that since he gets tired after using his powers, maybe he can only use them a few times a day. Contrary to that, Takatu reveals that it's the fact that he gets tired that allows him to keep using them, making the girl realize that this young man's prowess knows no bounds. Entering the city, Mokomoko notes that instead of protecting themselves with walls, they seem to have set up a magical barrier. Until they reach a tall hotel, the one Celestina mentioned they would find. The group decides to use the hotel as a base, and Denura rushes in, excited about the size of the place. Once inside, everyone sees that the place is truly fancy, and a classmate named Yuki Takabana approaches the girl in the group, expressing happiness that she is safe. Denura asks what he's doing there, and he replies that he doesn't have to stay with people who level up inefficiently. Beside him, a girl named Erika asks who the girl he's talking to is, displaying basic jealousy for everyone to see. But Takabana clarifies that they are just classmates, so there's nothing to it. On the other side, another girl praises her master for having such a kind heart even when dealing with rude people. Meanwhile, Denura asks who these strange people are, and since Takatu knows as much as she does, Takabana introduces his hand-picked bodyguards. The blonde is Erika from the 5th class. She doesn't care to introduce herself, but as Yugi ordered, she obeys. Next is Stephanie, from the 4th class, who makes it clear she doesn't want to talk to those strange people unless her master orders her to. In the 3rd class, Chelsea introduces herself in the most timid way possible, placing a bear in front of her face to simulate the plush, commanding the death of some girl inside her head. Then, Euphemia introduces herself as from the 2nd class. Finding Denura very ugly, she earnestly asks the girl to stay as far away as possible. Last but not least, the captain of the bodyguards introduces herself as Riza. In an excessively serious tone, she asks Denura not to be so arrogant as to think that Tachibana is just a classmate. With the end of this presentation round, Denura asks if the girls can stop being so aggressive for no reason, but Tachibana apologizes, saying he's not very good at being tough with girls. In the end, he asks everyone to be quiet for now. After that, Takadu comments to his friend that this guy was one of the students who stayed behind on the bus, but has no idea how he ended up here with these women behind him. Denura responds that the guy has always been popular among girls and quite cocky, so it seems he's just continuing that. Convinced of his ways, Tachibana soon invites Denura to be another one of his lovers. As the girl reacts negatively, he thinks it's because of Taka too and decides to make an exception for a man in the group so both could be his slaves. Denura was trying to understand if the guy was serious, while Taka too decided not to kill him now, thinking the young man might have some issues in his head. Denura asks why the boy is so arrogant, and Tachibana explains that he is from the Dominator class, a class with the ability to enslave lower-level individuals. But Denura implies that he must be way behind the level of the rest of the student group since they are busy with missions, while he's out there playing Simon Says. With that, Tachibana thinks Denura is already so in love that she wants to know everything about his life. So the Dominator reveals that there was a party to celebrate the success of the first mission in the city where he was. He was drinking at a table alone during the celebration when a classmate named Haruto Otori asked for permission and sat with him. As a member of the consultant class, Otori advises Tachibana to enslave first-level servants and make them level up. As they defeat new people, those defeated will also be enslaved, and much of that experience will pass to both of them. Since Tachibana didn't know he could do that, Otori explains that one of his abilities as a consultant is to know various hidden powers that people are unaware of. Finally, Otori says he's giving this advice because Tachibana is promising, and as the Dominator class is rarer, it would be foolish not to rely on a sage with such talent. With that, he bids farewell and wishes good luck to his colleague. With this story, the Dominator justifies why he's evolving without lifting a finger. He levels up by enslaving people who do the dirty work for him. And telling this story, he asks Denura once again if she would like to join his group, and the girl feels even more motivated to decline the invitation. So Tachibana asks the girl to just think about it and leaves. Takatu comments that Denura would probably be safer with that guy than with him, but the girl shows with her face that this opinion was quite unnecessary. Meanwhile, Lane is seeking to confront the darkness, and when she comes across it, the vampire asserts with conviction that this creature stands no chance against her. Back at the hotel, Denura wonders how long they will stay in that hotel, as it's been 3 days since they arrived. So she asks Mokomoko to go into his room and see what's going on, but the ghost won't enter that room even if they pay her, as she has no idea how the guy will react to such a sudden invasion. Then, Denura sees the city upside down below her because a servant named Masayuki had finally arrived wreaking havoc. With the immortal body beside him, any citizen run over by them would be turned into a third-class zombie. Inside the hotel, Mokomoko notices that the people there are not good at all because they have the smell of death. As they witness the rapid decline of the city's population, another ghost approaches their door. Instead of Denura wanting to go down to see what's happening, she lies on the comfortable bed in that luxury room and ignores everything. Mokomoko disapproves of the young woman's attitude, saying she can't just pretend the city is falling apart. Moreover, there's a hostile presence nearby spying on them, so it's wise to stay alert. Fearing that the situation might be more serious than she imagines, Denura tries to call Takatu, but the boy is fast asleep, dreaming of a moment from his childhood. He is awakened by a female voice calling his name, while his dog Mikori licks the boy's face. He gets up, sees a girl inviting him for breakfast, but as soon as he says he's coming, Takatu is awakened by the phone and called to action. As soon as he steps out of the room, he senses a strange presence around, although he doesn't see anything. Therefore, he focuses his vision and detects a ghostly figure in the corner of the corridor. Immediately, he eliminates Erika, Tachibana's bodyguard. Then he reaches Denura and warns her of a hostile ghost behind her. At the same time, Tachibana is away inspecting the mission but realizes that his servant's signal has disappeared. Moreover, a creature invades the area where they were. Back to the protagonist, Denura recognizes the blonde as Erika, and Takatu knows this will be a big problem with her master. Therefore, they have to get out of there as quickly as possible. Denora mentions that she needs to gather her things first, and as she acts like she's just going out to buy bread, Takatu asks about the reason for her calmness. She replies that she's used to this kind of pressure, but when Mokomoko says that the Denora family doesn't give up easily, the young woman admits she's not as evolved as her ancestors. As for Tachibana, the giant insect attacking him proves to be no considerable challenge, visibly frustrating the Dominator who was expecting something more dangerous. He repels the monster with his protective barrier, and after tearing off his arms, Stephanie praises the fact that not even level 100 monsters can defeat her master. The monster is still alive and asks who this strong man is, but ignoring the enemy, Tachibana launches a flare bomb at the insect and enslaves it after the victory. Next, the new servant is healed and informs his master that these rooms go up to level 150, as he was asked. So the master orders the insect to recruit new servants in the lower levels. With that decided, Tachibana returns to Erika, and seeing on the servant's camera that she fell in the corridor out of nowhere and lost the signal, he is confused about the reason for this. Euphemia supposes that Erika was trying to please the boss by bringing that Danora girl he wanted, or just wanted to eliminate the girl due to their earlier disagreement. For this reason, the master orders Riza and Chelsea to go after Danora, as she might have killed Erika. Far away, Elaine seems to be having more trouble with the darkness than she thought. By striking the enemy's forehead, she knows that her high-speed revivification is much faster than the collapse of the darkness, but it seems that it's not causing any damage. Meanwhile, Takatu and Danora try to escape, but Riza appears in the corridor and freezes the two protagonists, hoping to take the girl to her master. However, Takatu destroys the ice as if it's nothing, since he just learned that he can eliminate ice as if it were an individual. Obviously, this leaves the captain embarrassed with how easily the prisoner freed himself from his attack. For this reason, she tries to increase the difficulty level and prepares to use her wand again in the fight. Nevertheless, Takatu simply kills the wand with a simple command. Having done that, Riza realizes that the guy can destroy anything with just a thought, so she puts hostility aside and decides to cooperate with the two. Despite that, the only way she can use her magic is through her wand, so she takes out the last one she had on hand. Since she took the item from a delicate place, Danora is worried that Takatu is too focused on the scene, but he's just impressed with the fact that Riza can hide a wand in such a way. Then Takatu orders the captain to reveal her intentions, and she confesses that more people are coming after Danora besides her. The first evidence of this appears at that moment when a shadow tries to attack the girl, but her ancestral spirit from the Danora family manifests at the right moment to counter the hostility. But after the counterattack, the group realizes that it was just a doll and several identical ones were behind them. With that, Riza takes advantage of her companion's help and positions herself again for battle, but Takatu eliminates the problem on the spot. Nearby, Chelsea orders her dolls to beat that woman to death, but as they advance, Takatu eliminates them one by one. Chelsea feels what happened and mourns for her beloved dolls. Then the protagonists reach the staircase where she was hiding, and the girl resorts to tears, begging the two to stop their wickedness. They look at her with their usual skeptical expressions, but since Chelsea has surrendered, they get the information they need about her master. Observing the scene with spy insects, Tachibana learns that Riza died and Chelsea is out of action. Also, Takatu destroys anything he wants with his thoughts. Therefore, he decides to take the targets to a more easily observable place while attacking. As for the protagonists, they try to escape, but hundreds of cockatiels on the staircase are driving Danora crazy. Mokomoko knows that Tachibana is using these insects to monitor their group. Thus, Danora asks Takatu to kill them all, but the young man reminds her that these birds will fall on her head if that happens. So Danora decides to change her mind. But then Takatu remembers that these cockatiels cannot be left alive because they are capable of killing a human, for example, by entering the person's mouth in large numbers and suffocating them. Imagining this happening to her, Danora curses the entire bloodline of the despicable Yuki Tachibana. Mokomoko reminds the two that in this rhythm, the entire city is going to turn into zombies, so wisely they decided to continue with their plans. Since they didn't kill the insects, Tachibana thought that the presence of the bugs was hindering the boy's power, so he decides to attack to solve the problem. He orders the cockatiels themselves to attack. The insects light up in red and seem increasingly hostile, so Takatu decides to try a technique at that moment. If everything goes as he imagined, it won't be a problem to kill Tachibana right now. He focuses on a kind of magical portal that takes his thoughts to the target, and even though he's far from him, Takatu manages to bring down his enemy. However, since the cockatiels were still standing, the protagonist imagines that the master's death has freed the insects from prison. This news terrifies Danora, who thinks that this will make those disgusting creatures even more unpredictable. Danora asks the guy to wipe them all out, but Takatu asks if it's fair to kill a creature just because we think they are unpleasant. And with that life lesson, the two leave the place. Returning to the Dominator Master, Stephanie tries to bring him back with her healing magic, but absolutely nothing works. Euphemia announces that she's leaving since she's now free from the slavery power, but the fourth-class bodyguard doesn't seem to share that idea, so she decides to stay with her master. Leaving the hiding place, Euphemia comes across the fight between Lane and the Darkness. Soon, she warns the vampire that she has no chance against such a force, and since she doesn't know how to deal with that enemy, she decides to listen to the woman. With that, she enchants Euphemia and bites her, making her servant to extract everything she knows. Meanwhile, Takatu and Danura descend to the city and discover that practically the entire population of Hanabusa has been turned into undead, and Masayuki declares the start of the zombie epidemic hunting humans. Next week, we'll have more of this anime as soon as the new episode is released, so go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the like button below to support this video. See you guys.